Hypixel Skyblock has a coin-based economy. Unlike other games that might use an item-based economy, Skyblock, money is everything. Everybody wants to reliably make money, but most people don't have any idea how, which is the reason that money making methods on YouTube are so big. The only problem with these videos is that they're based off of testing, and in testing, if the sample size is not large enough, the data will be heavily skewed. But luckily for us, the wiki has recently released, therefore we have the statistics on so many different drop rates, and we can actually calculate the statistical amount of money you would make from a ton of different money making methods. But before we continue, we actually have a sponsor. This video is sponsored by Opera GX. This sponsor is actually crazy for me because I've actually been using Opera GX for over a year now. If you go to some of my old videos, you can legit see me using the browser, so I'm being genuine when I make all of these next comments. First of all, Opera GX is a gaming browser, and because of this, they have GX control, which allows you to control your CPU and RAM usage, which is extremely useful if you're someone who doesn't have the best PC. In addition, you also have a network limiter that you can use to limit the bandwidth that your browser uses. Opera GX also has an accessibility sidebar on the left of your screen, which at first might seem kinda useless, but once you get used to it and start using it, it's a must-have. The amount of times I've only watched a stream because I actually clicked that sidebar is crazy. And for Twitter, half of the time I'm browsing Twitter is using this sidebar. I barely open the actual website. And even if you don't use any of those social medias, they have a ton more, such as WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, and even Discord. In addition to that, they have GX Player, which allows you to connect your favorite music streaming service to Opera. They have countless different services that you can use, but personally for me, I use Spotify and it works flawlessly. And recently, Opera GX was released on mobile and you can connect it to your desktop browser to have a seamless experience. If this seemed interesting to you in any way, please consider clicking the link in the description to go and try it out yourself. Thanks to Opera for the sponsorship. And now, back to the video. Since there are so many money making methods, I can't fit them all into one video, so I'm just going to do the more popular ones. And if you guys want to see me cover more, just make sure to share this video and get it very popular, because then I know you guys like it and I'll make another one. So the first method I'll be looking at is frag running. This is an extremely popular money making method that I and a ton of other people have done, and it's said to be pretty good, upwards of making 15 mil an hour. Luckily for us, the statistics on these are very easy to calculate, and the only real variability is in how fast you can blood rush. Personally for me, including the downtime between runs, it takes me about 2 minutes per run, leaving me with about 30 runs in 1 hour. Now, all we need to do is calculate the amount of profit you would make per run. For any run that you do, you have a 25% chance of spawning any of the giants. And of each of these giants, you have a 50% chance of them actually dropping their fragment. So, if we multiply these two probabilities together, we can basically say that you get 0.125 parts of each fragment when you do a dungeon run. Obviously, you can actually get a part of a fragment, but this just makes it easier to visualize. Now, all we need to do to get the amount of money we would make per run is take the 0.125 and multiply it by the price of each of the fragments in the game. So the values I decided to use are 1 million for the Diamante handle, 100k for the Bigfoot lasso, another 100k for the laser eye, and finally 50k for the Jolly Pink rock. After multiplying all the numbers and adding them up, we get an average of 156.25k coins per run, which in my case, as a person who can do them in about 2 minutes, I would make 4.6875 million coins. But let's say you're more cracked than me and you can do them in like 1 minute. then you would be making 9.375 million coins, which is actually quite good. I think one of the reasons this money making method appeals to a lot of players is because you have a chance of making a ton of money if you just get really lucky. Let me give you a scenario of how this can actually be useful to you. Let's say you're a player who is really into dungeons or just enjoys frag running a lot. And let's say you began to start mining and want to know if it's more worth it for you to mine or for you to do frag runs. In this case, we're going to be assuming that you can do about 60 frag runs in 1 hour, but because you don't really like mining, you only make about 7 million coins an hour from mining. And now, using a calculator, you can pretty easily calculate the chances that you make more than 7 million coins an hour when you're frag running. Okay, so now you should be able to see that I have a calculator opened up, and all you gotta do to calculate this is do second distribution, then alpha, and then b, and this will bring you to binomial CDF. So first, you need to put in your trials, which is just another word for frag run, at least in our context. So how many frag runs can we do in 1 hour? It's 60, as we said before. Then the probability. So I created a weighted probability, and I don't really want to explain it, but just use this number, which is 0.15625. That's our probability. And then finally, we have to put in our X value, which in this case is basically how many millions of coins do you want to make on minimum. So we want to look at 7 million coins or more. So let's put 7 mil. You put 7 and then we click enter, enter, and then we will calculate a number. But this number that we calculated right here is not the actual probability. This is actually the chances that we make less than 7 mil an hour. So all we have to do to get higher is just take 1 and subtract this from 1. And if we do that and then multiply this number by 100, we will get that we have a 73.98% chance of making more than 7 million coins an hour. The next one we're going to be doing is worm fishing. As most of you may know, worm fishing is very popular because it is a very consistent money making method, and it is said to make a lot of money without needing very high requirements to start. Through the help of the wiki, I can actually calculate a very accurate estimation of how much money you will make an hour from worm fishing. First things first, let's look at the actual drops from a worm. So there's 4 different drops, this being a rough sapphire gemstone, a worm membrane, an eternal flame ring, and a carmine dye. So first, the rough sapphire gemstones I could include in the calculation, but like it's such a minuscule amount of money, like I don't think anybody really cares, so we'll cut that out. Then the eternal flame ring is very, very cheap, so I don't think anybody cares about that either, so I'll just cut that out. And then the carmine dye is just so incredibly rare that most people who are worm fishing will never get one, so I'm not going to include that in any of the profits. So the first thing we have to do for this calculation is basically determine the value of killing a single worm, which in other words just means taking the price of a worm membrane and dividing it by 4. I'm going to be using a value of 60,000 coins per membrane for this video, but you can use whatever you want if you're doing these calculations yourself. So if we just divide this by 4, we pretty easily get 15,000 coins per worm. And now all we need to do to calculate how much you would make an hour is basically calculate how many worms you would fish an hour, which isn't actually as hard as you think it would be to do. In a previous video, I actually used the data from the wiki to calculate that it will take on average about 1.35 seconds per cast, assuming you have a fully maxed fishing setup. However, we can't just directly use that number because there's actually 2 things that we have to consider. The first thing is that whenever we're casting our rod, there's going to be a little bit of delay from the time that we actually catch something and the time we recast it. So usually this will be pretty high due to us catching so many different sea creatures, but in this case, since it's only going to be one sea creature, this delay is going to be pretty low, and I'm going to just be assuming that in this case it's going to be 0.5 seconds. But that's not it. We also have to consider that every 5 minutes or just like before 5 minutes, we actually have to kill all of the worms so that they don't despawn. There's no way to really get a concrete number for this, so I'm just going to be assuming that it takes about 10 seconds to kill all the worms every 5 minutes. Since we're going to be doing this every 5 minutes for 1 hour, all we have to do is 60 divided by 5, and that gives us 12 times of us killing worms, which in other words is just 2 minutes of killing worms an hour, meaning that our only active fishing time is actually for 58 minutes. Now we have to divide this number by the amount of time per cast. The theoretical value would be 1.35 seconds normally, but in this case, since we are underground and there is no access to the sky, this is actually doubled. So we're going to be using this times 2, plus the 0.5 second buffer. Now, if we just divide the amount of active fishing time by this catch rate, we actually get about 1,088 worms caught per hour. Now we multiply that by the value of 15,000 coins per worm, and we get that you'll make on average 16.32 million coins. This is assuming your sea creature chance is actually 100%, but if it isn't, just multiply this value by your sea creature chance. So if you have an 80% chance, just multiply this by 0.8. This method definitely lives up to its name because you make so much per hour and it's really easy to get into. To do frag running efficiently, you obviously need a Hyperion. It's just a given. And a Hyperion right now costs on average 850 million coins. If you instead invested all of that money into getting a fishing setup, first of all, you would have some left over, and second of all, you would have a gigajack setup that would make you upwards of 16 million coins per hour, as we just calculated. In my personal opinion, worm fishing trumps frag running in all ways. The only way I could see you frag running instead is if you really hate worm fishing and you really like frag running. A lot of people really like frag running, which is probably the reason why it still exists as a money making method when stuff like this makes so much more money. And that's basically all I got for you. If you enjoyed, please let me know to make another one, and see ya.